NZ Aerosports, Icarus Canopies, now Gyro. That's right, we've rebranded, and Gyro is our next generation. It honours our founder, as that's the name we knew him by, but Gyro also marks the start of a new chapter. And not to be biased, but it's going to be fucking epic. Long story short, we're more us than ever, so if you're new to the sport, or even a Sky God Ninja Turtle, welcome. I think our valiant leader Lucy, Gyro's daughter, says it best.
And we still got that fuck yeah attitude. Rebrand! Woo!
Rebrand woo indeed, Lucy. Anyway, head over to gyro.com for more info and get amongst you legends.
I was 19, broke, unemployed, and sold my girlfriend's canopy for drug money. So I thought I better sew her a new one. What a sentence, and what a story. This describes the humble yet outrageous beginnings of NZ Aerosports, the home of Icarus Canopies, in the words of our founder himself. From getting a paratrooper toy from his mom, watching parachutes at the DZ as a 6-year-old, jumping off the wharf with a parachute made from bed sheets, doing his first jump at 16, sewing his first canopy on a borrowed machine at 19, and starting to sell parachutes out of a garage in 1986, Paul Gyro Martin had an undying love for the sky. Our company started with one man with the wildest of spirits and a true blue sky dream, a renegade. In the time that Gyro created and ran the Icarus Canopies brand until he passed away in 2017, he pushed everything he had to its limits. We miss him, and we always will. Gyro is the next generation of NZ Aerosports. It honors our founder, of course, because it was the name we all knew him by, but Gyro the rebrand also marks the start of a new chapter, our next jump. Gyro is the space between sound and silence, art and science, chaos and calm. Gyro is a state of epic tranquility that transcends understanding. That moment, in the door, in free fall, mid-swoop, where nothing but the present exists. A perfect balance of euphoria and thrill. Gyro captures our passion for flying and our commitment to designing break-the-fucking-rules canopies that deliver pilots pure, wild flight. Hey gang, so I got a new book out. It's called The Upside of Fear, and it's exactly what you think it's about. It's about the good side of, well, getting scared. In it, we talk not only about the science and biology behind fear, but the psychology as well. And it's not just coming from me, it's coming from some of the best in the sport. Omar Alhigelan, Jeff Provenzano, Maxine Tate, and so many more have contributed their sometimes terrifying stories to the book to help you overcome your fear. So head to the lunaticfringepodcast.com. You're going to find the link to the book there, as well as the other books. It's available in ebook, paperback, hardback, and audiobook right now.
Coming straight from the cockpit, it's another episode of Lunatic Fringe with the fucking pilot.
Ready, set, go! Back in the can with another edition of the Lunatic Fringe podcast, and one I've been looking forward to for a while, and I'm so glad it's happening. Please, who are you, and what do you do?
My name is Norman Kent, and I am a skydiving cinematography artist.
You are
That's what I've been doing
Norman
all my
Kent.
life. Yes.
Man.
Yes, I am.
I'll tell you what, man, when I started doing this podcast a long time ago, I had a wish list of people that I wanted to talk to, and I don't know why it took me so long to finally reach out to you, but I'm so stoked that I did.
Great. I'm glad you did. It's always a great thing to have an opportunity to and a platform to just chat about things and get to know each other and
Sure.
and share what we're up to. So
Well, and I mean, hey, the only thing skydivers like more than jumping is talking about jumping.
exactly.
So, for those that don't know who you are, obviously this is going to paint quite a picture. But even for those that do and know everything that you've done, the idea is kind of to find out, what got you into it all and how you ended up doing all the different things you're doing. So I always started out by saying, how did you get started? Not necessarily in skydiving, but in anything so-called extreme, or I suppose out of the mainstream.
Mhm. Well, yeah, my story about how I got started skydiving, I'm glad we're not getting into that too much because it's really very common, the same as everybody else was going to do it once and then all of a sudden got hooked, so there's nothing really extraordinary there. But I was already a photographer and cinematographer when I started skydiving. I actually got the bug for for photography at a very early age, at the age of 14. And so I was really a passionate photographer already. And when I started jumping, it was just I couldn't wait to put a camera on my head. It took me a whole, I think, 23 jumps before I slapped a camera on my head. This is back in the static line days, and it was so it was a natural progression for me. I think one of the things that's important to say is I think a lot of people ask me questions that they want to hear the answer of, like, what was my strategy? How did I become what I became, and how did I end up? Like what's the magic to it? And I really don't have a straight answer for that because it wasn't like I had this aha, okay, I'm going to do this, and then that'll open up this door, and then that'll do that, and then I'll be, doing Hollywood films and all this other stuff. And it's really not like that. I'm really more like a shoot from the hip kind of guy. And
Mm,
I've been consistently really just falling back on my quality. My passion for photography brings up a certain amount of quality. It's quality junkie per se. And I've learned a lot of things in my early training in photography that have become instrumental on how I deal with my work as far as the perfectionism level. And then I always had this idea, which was completely erroneous, but that was just my little dream, that if you're just the best, you're automatically going to get the work, and that you're automatically going to be chosen. And later on, I learned that that wasn't the case. There was a lot of politics, and there was like, wait a minute, I'm the best. My picture is better. My work is better. Why are you choosing that guy? And then I realized there's more of a political side in who you know, and also timing, just circumstances. But I'm proud to say that I really, I've not played that game too much. I've just
sure.
stuck with the just do what you do, be the best, and the jobs that really, belong to you or deserve you or whatever will come your way. And if they don't, then they don't, and just
Sure.
kind of left it for destiny to sort things out for us. So,
Sure.
and that has played a key role. I did play the political game a few times, and I was terrible at it. I think the scariest part, yeah, it was horrible because it's just not me. And I think the scariest part was I started getting really good at it. That was kind of the competitiveness that we had in the industry. And okay, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that and I'm going to bid this way and I'm going to, even cheat this way or cheat that way, because that was the game. I mean, people would tell you one thing and then they would do another. They would go like, hey, let's agree on this price, so we're not bidding against each other on price. We're bidding on quality only. I'm going like, I'm game. I could win in that game all day long, And then all of a sudden you realize you got underbid price wise, and you're like, ooh, that was just a setup, and things like that. Instead, when I started playing some of the political games, there was the scary moment when I got this big job and I was like, yes, yes, I got the job. I got the job. Yeah, I got it. And then I was like, got cold feet and went, I have no idea how to do the job anymore. It's like I learned how to get the job, but I lost track on how to do the job. And I mean, it was obviously senseless because I know how to do the job, but it was like I didn't have the self-confidence. All of a sudden it was like, now I gotta do the job. It's like I got so focused on getting the job.
Sure.
And that was a scary moment because it really took me away from who I am, as a person.
Well, I can imagine. Well, and especially if you got hooked on photography at the young age of 14, which is incredibly young young for something like photography, by the time you're getting out there jumping, you've already got some skill to back up what it is you want to do. So to have to shift gears and play different games instead of just going towards what you're passionate about and what you're good at is not a fun thing.
Right. Yeah, it's not, and it's also a disappointment. You think the world works in certain ways, and then you go like, oh, it's not the way it works.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
but it is just, part of it is just being naive. There's obviously, even if you have quality, there's a lot to be said about timing and circumstances and who you know and all of that, and the destiny putting A and B together and all the elements like that. So there's a lot that plays a role. It's not just being the best doesn't automatically get you the job. You can be the best and also be a dick, or excuse my language. I'm not sure what's permitted here,
Oh,
and then that may cost you the jobs, So,
to, to
so
to to clear that up really quickly, I wrote for Blue Skies magazine for 10 years as the fucking pilot, so you can say anything you want
okay,
on
okay,
this
great. I'm glad.
podcast. So
So
now
yes.
let me ask, as you went into skydiving, already a photographer and already passionate about that, you said you obviously quite quickly went into it, but especially at the time frame that you started in skydiving, when did the reality of what you were setting yourself up for kick in? Because you weren't going to jump out of an airplane with a GoPro on your head.
Well, I think it kicked in the very first jump. Because it's like it was very quickly. I basically, I just seen a couple of photos, people wearing cameras and stuff. I was very much a novice. I bought a little Kodak $25 camera. There was a wind up. You wind it up, and it's had a spring, and then it was an Instamatic 126 cartridge that you slapped on there.
Right.
And so I just bent some metal and put it up there, and just went like, hey, this is my setup, and bought a motorcycle helmet on, put it on, slapped it all together, and then got out of the airplane, and it was like just out the door, it was like the thing was choking me. It was like, because it was loose, I didn't have any idea that it needed to be supported somehow. You put it on and you feel like, okay, I got the costume on, now I'm ready for the party. Like
Right.
that's basically the approach I took. And then I got out, and everything was like moving everywhere, and I couldn't, I was in, also I was a novice, so I was having enough trouble just with my own body to add that kind of shit to it. And so it was like, it was really quickly wow, this is not to be taken lightly. Um, and I had no idea what I was doing. I learned in Mexico. So in Mexico, we had no resources as far as, the best, and all the stuff was in the US. So I had nobody to talk to about that. Everybody was letting me do things just because there was no rules, but not
Sure.
because it was a good idea. And but there was nobody to go, hey, how did you do this? Or how does one do that? Let me see your helmet. There was none of that. It was just more like okay, man, you're gonna put that thing on your head. All right, well, good luck.
Well, now also, you're talking about, you said you had the first camera on your head when had 20 something jumps, which of course now absolutely can't happen. I think most drop zones have pretty high jump number rules for putting a camera on your head. But so not only are you trying to learn to fly your body, but you're trying to learn to photograph in free fall. And it's not the instant gratification of a GoPro. This is I shot a roll of film. Now I got to land. Now I got to go get it developed. So the learning curve had to be really difficult with that too, right?
Yeah, it was. And it's also the irony of what you were just saying is that also, um, in today's standards, 24 jumps is a lot more skydiving quality than back then.
Sure.
It's just that the rules have changed. But really, when you spend 5 or 6 of those jumps doing a static line, and then a 5 second delay, and then a 10 second delay, by the time you get to 24 or whatever, I think it was 23 or 24, by the time you get there, you really don't have a lot of time in free fall. And even the high altitude jumps in Mexico were at 7,500 feet,
Huh.
so above ground level. So it's like, there's still so the irony of it is that, again, 20 jumps today is a lot more quality, but the rules don't permit it these days. And yeah, it was quite the thing. And I think the thing I should say here is that part of the thing that was fascinating, and part of the thing that was a turn on, of course, the visuals. My passion for photography is basically I have a drive and a passion and attraction for capturing beauty that I see and sharing it with the world. And so that's really the foreground of it. It's not like photography or a job or skydiving. It's more like, wow, I see beauty, and then I want to capture it and share it, and so on. And so that became part of the main thing. But to answer your question on the procedures, let's say, on all of that, the complications of it all also became the attraction. And what I'm trying to say is that one of the things that I didn't know at the time, but over my career, which now spans over 49 years now, is that the variables we have in skydiving and the limitations we have in skydiving and all of those things that must work themselves out for everything to work out, whether it's in a world record or in a career in photography or whatever it is you're doing. There's so many things. I mean, the obvious ones are limitation in time, temperatures. As an athlete, you're in a little sardine can and for 20 minutes and cold, and then you're expected to go out there and perform. And there's a lot of things that go wrong. And weather and people in front of the camera not doing what they're supposed to, and so many other things. So all of that became a lot of the attraction, like wow, I need to dance with all these variables and see what it is that I can do to come up with the right set of circumstances to be in the right place at the right time and capture the right image. And then it became beyond photography. It became like a magic trick, like a like somebody juggling circumstances to see if you can get the right combination to make a beautiful piece. And that's what became the attraction, and that's what drove me. And then the rest of it became more like, okay, this is what I got to do. This is what I got to do. This is what I got to do, including modifying the helmet, perfectioning, and coming up with all the different things to make things work properly. And that's sort of when I became, I was always a little bit like that, but I became a bit of an inventor, meaning not an inventor like, let's say, Bill Booth is inventing things for others, but more like, okay, I got to fix this, so I got to see what works for me. So if I do this, it'll work better this way, and it'll be that. And I never thought of it as an intentional thing. It was just something I was trying to do for me. So when I look back at my career now, and over the years, I go like, wow, there hasn't been one time or 1 year out of my career that I wasn't modifying or inventing or making something better that other people copied, including the full face helmet. I was the first one to ever come up with that idea, and that's a funny story on its own. And other things, the camera suit that I've developed has its own unique. It's been tweaked since day one, and it's always been an intriguing and very attractive inquiry. And so that's what made a lot of my photography that much more superior than anyone else's, is that I really had a passion for what's going to make me feel more comfortable out there, what's going to make me perform better, what's going to make me safer, what's going to make me, well, I don't want to say safety because I did do a lot of stupid things that were not safe. But anyway, that's part of the attraction. Those limitations became part of the obsession, part of the, hey, the more I understand this, the better it's going to be. And then when you master those, it's like magic. It's like beautiful, attractive, awesome. Just like yikes, just like skydiving itself. When there's all these problems we were just talking about, well, when you get out of the airplane, it's like this fantasy world that you stay in for a few seconds, and it's all well worth it. So to me, the photography and all that was just an added world to try to work out all those variables and try to find a way to understand it like a language and go, wow, here's this language, and if I understand this, then this is where I should be, and this is what I should do, and this is what I should play with, and boom, I would get rewarded with beautiful images, and I go, wow, okay, I got lucky again.
Now, when you started skydiving and you started shooting in skydiving, how quickly did you realize that this was something that was going to turn into a career? Was there a plan before skydiving that kind of just disappeared because of it, or was that always kind of the aim?
No, in the back of my mind, it was always the aim, but never as I mentioned before, never as a how should I say it? Never as a plan, never as a career. Okay. It was more like an insane thing to do because I was going away from all the standards that like, okay, well, I wasn't like, oh, I could make a living at this. It was more like, I like this, and then you go that way and you go like, how are you going to make a living? I don't know, I don't know, but I like this.
Yeah.
So, so that was really the case. In fact, in that realm, the reason I left Mexico, I met Diana down there, Diana Sky Dancer, and adorable woman who just taught me so much, and I have so much to thank her for. And but I realized quickly that I was peaking. I mean, I was becoming the instructor as a student, and it's not like today where they push you to be an instructor right out of student status, which is wrong.
Right.
Like just to make more money, to sell more courses, whatever. But everybody's an instructor nowadays. But to me, it was more like I was natural at it, and it was like getting out of the airplane and going arch, and what's the problem with that? And other people were going like, I can't do it, I'm scared, and then they'd come right down, or it would take them 2 or 3 flights to altitude, well, to 2,000 feet, they can call that altitude, to decide if they were going or not, so pretty soon they were like, hey, this kid's pretty comfortable, why don't we have him spot the plane? And then we don't need to use that out of the 4 spaces we have, So here I had like 8 jumps, and there I'm spotting the plane for other students and stuff, because I was comfortable looking out the door and stuff like that. That seemed like, well, what are you guys scared? It's like, it's pretty cool up here. And so, with that mentality, there was a lot of progress in the photography too. But I think it was more of so I left Mexico because I thought we were peaked in Mexico. This is after 1 year and 100 jumps. And we had been to the States, and I thought that's where it's at. And I remember my mother, she never realized that, but she told me something which she was trying to convince me to stay. And she was like, you shouldn't leave, you're going to be a little fish in a big pond over there. And here, you're going to be a big fish. And I was like, that's all I need to leave. It's like, I don't want to be a big fish in a little pond. I want to be the shark, in the big pond, and not in a competitive sense, but more like, hey, that's no reason to leave, not to stay. And so I left. And I just didn't know why. In the back of my mind, I was thinking photography is better, and my career would be better in the U.S. But I was also following skydiving. In the back of my mind, I just couldn't put it in the foreground because it made no sense to devote my life to skydiving. So it was more like I'm going to be a photographer, and in the U.S. it's better opportunity. When in reality, in the back of my mind, I was going like, yeah, the jumps are going to be better over there, and people are cool skydivers over there. And I go, shh, don't tell anybody. I had a little battle in my head going on. And so as I came over, I actually found the surprise that I was like, okay, I'm here now. Where's the work? And everybody's like, well, now you're one of everybody else, big pond, and you have no work, and you have no future, and we had no money.
Sure.
So now the reality was, oh wow. Now, so I became a camera salesman, because I thought,
really,
this is what I know. Yeah, I became a camera salesman. I'm like, this is what I know, cameras. So I became a camera salesman for work, and skydiving on whenever I could afford it. Every so often, Deanna and I would go on a weekend, and once a weekend for a few jumps, and kind of continued that way. And at one point, it just happened. I think that, again, to me, my drive and just knowing that things would work themselves out, like I say, shooting from the hip. Eventually, the opportunity came to work. I actually was offered a job by Tom Sanders. Actually, he was a beginner skydiver, but he had a camera photography operation shooting first jump students, static line students. One picture every time somebody exited the plane, and so on. But he was doing it in Elsinore, and he wanted somebody to run it in Paris. So he said, hey, why don't you run this thing in Paris, and let's give it a shot. And I did, and I was really good at it. And then at that point, it was simple, but so he was impressed with the whole thing. And then I had to quit my photography, my camera sales job, because they required me to work on the weekend on Saturday. That was a big sales day. And the drop zone was only weekend skydiving. So there was a choice. And I thought, I'll work for only the weekend, even though it's less money than working all week. And then I'll have the week free to maybe get a different job later, or something. And that's what turned me right into skydiving as a professional, skydiving photography, with just shooting students. literally stick my head out the door, the window of a DC-3, and every time a body came out, no matter what body position they had, I just snapped one picture, And if there was 30 students in the DC-3, I had a 36 exposure roll of film, and one per, one per body. It was so that became the job, and eventually Tom turned it over to me, and it was my job, and it just kind of snowballed from there. And living or working at the drop zone, obviously opportunities there to shoot skydiving and shoot records and shoot other
Sure.
things. But it always was circumstances. Just everything was circumstances.
Sure.
Even
Well,
my
it's
first picture published, was
I was
circumstances.
gonna say it's funny to hear it from the opposite side, and that photography um drew you into skydiving specifically to be able to take care or to fill that need for your art with that. Whereas for me and so many people I know, photography came into my life because of skydiving. Because for years, shooting, tandem videos, I started shooting when we were using, high 8 cameras and 35 millimeters off the front, and you'd shoot your roll of film, and at the end of the day, with however many loads, the camera went in your locker and it came back out the next day. And it was years before I learned how to shoot on anything but fully auto with that 35 millimeter camera. And I finally just woke up one day and went, I have a shitload of really expensive camera gear and I don't know how to use any of it. So I should probably learn how.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's actually one of my, I don't want to say pet peeves, but it is a little bit of a concern, I should say,
Sure.
in the sense that, what we have is people, they're saying, I want to make a living in skydiving. And they go, okay, I'll just put a GoPro on my head and go. And they have no interest in photography, no
Yep.
knowledge of photography. And the photography is so devalued that it's just like anybody can do it. And there's really no interest in it. So they're shooting, they're doing the tandem interviews with a helmet underneath their arm, like, hey, interviewing, or just holding it up here on the side, not even paying attention if the camera's even pointing properly. Why?
Sure.
Because it's so wide that somewhere in the frame, the person's face is going to be when instead of thinking, where are my corners, where are they pointing, how can I do a better composition, how can I move around to make it better, there's never that, because there's no interest in the photography. So
Sure.
as a result, who we have representing and marketing our sport, which can only be viewed through the cameras of the photographers, are people that don't care about the
Sure.
visuals. So then that is how it's how it's being displayed or showed. My approach is more of one that somebody would really see the difference on the work, and even if they're not in the picture, they would find it interesting, or they would
Sure.
find that they're touched by it. And so that's one of the things that's like okay, wow, this, and that's exactly the thing, is like when I when I teach the photography, it's really more of a intentionality thing. It's like, what are you trying to create and what are you trying to do? And then from there, all the decisions are around, based on that vision, and not just well, it doesn't matter, it's going to come out anyway, so I don't need to know
Sure.
anything.
Sure.
I actually had a friend once that came down a bit disappointed. He was working for me in a competition doing video, and he was like, "Oh, my video didn't work." I said, like, "What happened?" He said, "Oh, my battery was dead." And I was like, "Oh man, and okay, well, they'll have to do a re-jump or whatever, and next time he came down, he was like, "Man, my battery was dead again." He says, "Well, did you charge?" He says, "No, well, no, I forgot." It's like, well, what the hell. So it's like, you're not even have enough interest to go, is my equipment working or anything? And
Sure.
then he kept arguing that he was a better photographer than somebody else. And he was a better photographer, but not when you consider that you're not bringing anything back.
Yeah, does
You
not
can
if you
aim
don't
the
get the
camera
shot.
better. Yeah, exactly. You can aim the camera better. You have better composition skills and better flying skills. But if you keep going up there with a dead battery, that's not being a better photographer. So
Sure.
just things like that. But that's just me and my personal obsession with imagery and beauty and quality.
I'll tell you what, though, I was very lucky in when I came up and when I started shooting video, because I started in the Chronicles video era, where all of a sudden you're seeing all these insanely intense visuals coming off of these videos with guys like Olav and Omar and Mike Vale and all these guys doing this incredible stuff, and then video shot exactly by you and Tom Sanders and all these amazing people. So I was very lucky in that I came up at a time when the video and the still photography was being very well represented. Now it's kind of a GoPro world, but I was very lucky in that I was like, oh, I got to get a video that's at least that good, because holy shit, because that was amazing. I want to get the shot. I just didn't know any damn thing about the camera equipment on the ground. So it was a bit of a mix. And then I finally was like, I should probably know what I'm doing with this stuff if I'm going to keep doing this.
Right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, as you got going into it and you started blending photography with skydiving, when did it really start taking off for you? Obviously, you were doing the work shooting out of the DC-3, but when did the free fall stuff really kick off for you?
Well, it was a gradual thing. Again, my approach was more of a just a doing my best and they'll notice me kind of thing. The very first picture I got published in Parachutes was a 2-page spread, and it was a ladies' night record in Elsinore. And literally, I just wanted to experiment. My drive for photography just had me like trying new things all the time, and I wanted to experiment with flashes, which I didn't have. And this is a very basic system, a flash on top of the camera with AA batteries. Recycling time, I think, was about 6 seconds before you can take a second picture. And of course, you don't even know when that is. You have to kind of just wait, you know. And so it was very crude, but I wanted to play with it. So I showed up at one evening at the drop zone, knew they were going to have night jumps, and I literally walked into up to the manifest window and was like, "Hey, I'm looking for a group to shoot. I have a camera with a flash, and I'd like to shoot some pictures, and I'm just looking for somebody to shoot it. What's going on? What's manifested?" And there was this girl next to me, and she looked at me and just hugged me and was like, "You have a camera with a flash?" And I was like, "Yeah, you're my best friend now." And she brought me over to the ladies, and they were all cheering and stuff because I guess the photographer they were going to use, I think it was Ray Cottingham's equipment, broke. There was nobody else available, and they were like, "Man, we need you." So we went up, and they built the 15-way, I think it was, or something at the time was a record,
Right.
and I fired one picture. I fired one, exit or something, and then I was like, by maybe one more, and then I was like, I better wait, to make sure my flash is recycled before I shoot another picture. And when I thought that was completed, I just fired, and it was the one picture of the record. So it was logically and obviously published, but it was just a fluke. It was just one of those things. And the same thing happened with my professional work. I kept wondering why other people were being hired. Like at Nationals 1982, I think it was. There was these people that were clearly not as good as me, but they had been hired to jump camera for ABC's Wide World of Sports, and they
I
were
remember
jumping
that
these
show.
yeah, the big beta cams with the three quarter inch decks on their chest, and it was like, but it was huge, uh, on your head, and they were having problems and stuff, and they needed they actually were shooting on film, one camera on film, and the only reason they were shooting film on that one camera was to shoot slow motion. So to capture slow motion, there's only the only camera that did that. Video cameras didn't do slow motion. And Randy DeLuca was the one that was going to, be operating that, but he got a call to shoot one of the James Bond movies. So all of a sudden, I was at the drop zone already, and somebody's running to me going like, "Hey, your name came up. They were wondering who can run this camera," and I told them to talk to you, and so just like that, somebody said like, "Hey, do you know how to run this camera?" I'm like, "Sure, I know how to run this camera. I've never seen the damn thing before." But I thought, how difficult can it be? Especially a mechanical camera. It's just like, you got to know how to wind it and put the film and all that. But I'm sure I could learn it overnight. So I got hired to do that, and I was like having a blast doing that. And then one of the photographers that was getting his neck completely killed. He was like, "Hey, can we trade? I need to go into small camera, and you don't seem to care." And to me, I was having a lot of fun with the film camera, but I think I did it a little bit as an ego, like, yeah, those big cameras don't bother me, I can bring it on. And so I did. I jumped the big camera, and so that was the first job that was a big job. And again, it was just being at the right place, right time, and people knowing that, hey, this guy can handle it, and to point the finger at you. Once the politics are out to the side, once they've ran out of options, or once whatever, I back then I was the last option because I was the low man on the totem pole, but it really was that way. And and that's how things came to be. It was always like that, and then from there on, it was, again, there wasn't that many of us doing movie film and capable of doing it. So there was opportunities for feature films and things like that came up. But that's when I started learning that there was quite the mafia. People that really were not very good at it were getting the jobs. People that were not very good at being in front of the camera were getting in front of the camera because their philosophy was like, hey, the producers and directors don't know. They think this is the best, and that's all they need to know. And I was like, that's sad. I was even asked to sabotage a shot in a movie film. That way we could extend the job. And I was like, oh, I don't. Yeah, you need to just have a problem, like go low or something. I'm going like, I don't go low. It's like, I don't go low. It's like, no, that doesn't happen. Like, well, we need you to fake it, and I'm like, I can't, so I got quite blackballed for a while because of it. But the point is, to continue answering your question, it all just kind of came to be. And what's ironic about this about this part of the conversation is that today is kind of the same philosophy, in the sense that I'm out there doing stuff. I participate in several boogies, and they're multi-discipline. You'll see me in Summerfest shooting wingsuits or shooting, head down or head up or angle or belly. And, I mix it up and try to stay current in all of the disciplines, even though I'm not the best in any of them. And it becomes something that when you're needed for a job, you can step into any role. I had a job that I did with Craig O'Brien, who invited me to shoot Kingsman: The Secret Service. So we were in England in the middle of shooting, and the beginning of shooting the job, and the director of photography basically said that the stuff wasn't exciting enough, and he got on YouTube, and started finding stuff that he liked. He said, I like this, and he was pointing at free flying, and the belly flyers that were picked for the job didn't know how to do free flying, so they got replaced. and Craig, yeah, so they got like, okay, sorry, who free flies here? And like, we brought in my son Ramsey was my assistant, and he just stepped in and did double duty, and other people that happened to be around there that were good free flyers, like Mikey Carpenter, and and then and Craig O'Brien and I looked at each other and went like, sure, you want us to go on our heads? No problem. You want us to go? So we were comfortable for that reason. So for me, a lot of it is just be comfortable, be good, stay on the spotlight, do the boogies, do the records, do all that stuff, be comfortable, be completely ready. And then when somebody goes, hey, who can do this? That people will point right at you and go, that guy over there, he's the one to call. Sure. And that's kind of how I always believed that it should be. And once the politics didn't work, or whatever the circumstances were, the finger always pointed at me as a go-to guy. So that's,
well, I mean,
my plan was paying off.
At the end of the day, if you can't get to where the shot is, it doesn't matter how good a photographer you are if you're not there.
Right. Yeah.
So you got to be able to get to it.
Right. Yeah.
So what was the first big film that you ended up doing? Like, what was the breakout role through all the Hollywood stuff that you've done?
The first big film that I shot, as far as feature films, I participated in Navy SEALs. Was
I know that well. I can picture the scene right now.
What was his name? I keep forgetting his name. Charlie Sheen.
Yeah.
Charlie Sheen and Michael Biehn. Yeah. So in fact, it's interesting because that scene has probably the footage has been resold to other feature films at least 4 or 5 times. So, and it was one where I was naive enough and I was new enough I thought that it was better to just get paid in full outside the system and not be in the union and in the residuals pool. So every time that stuff sells, I'm like, oh, there's money out down the drain.
Well, for people
So
that haven't seen the film, if I'm picturing the shot correctly, it's out of the C-130. It's the military
yeah,
bail out of the back, right?
yeah, that's correct. And then in free fall, they're in formation, doing as they go on a halo, basically jump, So
I mean, that's an
and yeah, that was
iconic
my
shot.
first one. Yeah,
It's
it is an iconic shot, and it's a pretty interesting thing, to be that was my first one. And then I did a bunch of other ones. My resume is at normankent.com, and also in skydivingmovieproductions.com. So you can look at the list of credits. But yeah, there's a lot of really great ones, that were really a lot of fun. Get Smart, also Eraser with Arnold Schwarzenegger, Terminal Velocity, Drop Zone, all of those kind of films, Godzilla, so a lot of the feature films that I did were really just came from it started snowballing. And what's interesting is I actually left California with the idea that I would never work Hollywood again because I was so sickened by the mafia, the skydiving mafia in the movie making that was in place. And I finally they did some stuff to me that was really really not cool. And it was very much a scoring system, where if they did you a favor, you owed it. So that meant that if you got a job, then you had to pay back that favor by hiring them, even if they were not qualified for the job or if they were not the best choice for the job. And and I finally, something happened that was just not cool, and I really got sick of it. And I remember going, I got to get back to stop playing these politic games. This is killing me, and going back to basics. And I talked to Diana, and we were like, hey, we're going to go back and we're going to move away as far as we can, which is Florida. And one of the reasons to pick Florida was puffy clouds, beautiful green all the time, water backgrounds everywhere. And, that's a cameraman's dream, aerial sceneries. So I thought, let's just go there and we're going to live in a tent. And, we're just going to skydive and go back to basics. We're never working Hollywood again because all the Hollywood films pipeline through Hollywood, and all the features, especially back then. And to my surprise, the films started coming my way, just following me, looking for me over there. Drop Zone was the very first film. We were like, it was written by Guy Manos, so he was a Florida guy, and so he was very much bringing it to Florida. And then even though I didn't shoot all of them in Florida, they came looking for me there. So like I shot Terminal Velocity. Terminal Velocity was shot in Arizona, but I shot it. We reshot it. The director didn't like the original stuff that was done by another team, and so we reshot that. And those were back to back. And then there was Eraser was shot partially in Florida, and films like that. Get Smart was shot in Florida and was also came to me looking for me there. So all of a sudden, the minute I was in integrity about my who I am, and I turned my back on what I thought was just the money, all of a sudden it's like I got rewarded with, okay, here's all the work coming your way. You don't
sure,
have to be there and you don't have to play that game.
sure.
And I put a halt to that. It was like, yeah, now that I'm here, I'm not playing that game anymore. And I was called on it. I was like, hey, yeah, you got to put me in, remember that job that I gave you, or remember this favor you owe. And I was like, no, I'm not playing that game anymore. That's why I left. I don't play. I'm out. And luckily it's a simple mafia game. It's not like like the CIA where you never can get out of the game.
Sure. Well, for something like the movie Drop Zone too, I mean, you said that was shot in Florida, yeah?
Yeah. Yeah.
That wasn't Mo Valletta was attached to that too, wasn't he? He did the base jump out of that window, didn't he?
He did. He did the double for for the scientist kind of guy. He was a passenger. He was not one of the skydivers, so he
Yeah.
was doing that. Did some interesting stunts, including landing on top of one of the buildings. It was like, wow, that was scary. And Tom Sanders was working. Him and I were working side by side on that. We were independently hired. We were not. He wasn't working for me, or I wasn't working for him. We were just in the same team. But we were the two cinematographers, and yeah, there was A lot of good skydivers on that film. A lot of interesting stories.
Oh, there'd have to be. I mean, that, and again, in the skydiving world, the only word to use for that film is iconic. That was one of the films that hooked a lot of people. For me, it was Point Break and the movie Drop Zone were like, oh fuck, I got to go do that.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that's funny is a lot of skydivers get really upset with us, like we don't have anything to do with it, but they get upset because it's like, how could you let them do that? Everybody knows you can't talk in free fall, and skydives don't last, especially base jumps don't last 2 minutes, and all this other stuff. And it's like, dude, it's just a job, okay? And any exposure to skydiving always brings people. I mean, I as a filmmaker, I want to say that I'm responsible for a huge population of skydiver influx into the sport. And it's like, talk about promoting skydiving, maybe not as big as Bill Booth inventing tandem and stuff, but certainly every time we put out something out, people would go like, "Oh yeah, I want to go do that." Especially a film like Drop Zone that was mostly skydiving. It was not just a little skydiving scene in a movie. It
Sure.
was all a story around skydiving, and then not terminal velocity, Cutaway, which was the same story as Drop Zone. And so that those kind of things. I also did a commercial once that just generated a huge amount of interest, and it brought a lot of skydivers. People, then drop zone owners were just saying that people were flooding to do a tandem after that, because the commercial involved a tandem student, a tandem passenger who was legitimately a first jump student who was taking up a phone to do a fashion photo shoot in free fall with Roberta Mancino.
Yeah.
And that was the commercial. And they actually picked an actual real non-jumper for that part, although he had to do a bunch of jumps because it wasn't a one jump job. But it was a legitimate thing. And that brought a lot of people because they could see themselves. They're going, oh yeah, I get to do that. I get to be tandem, and I get to do that. And the only problem was two things. One was a parachutist wouldn't cover it, wouldn't do an article. We had beautiful photos, and they wouldn't do anything. And I was like, how can you? This is like I'm responsible for a huge influx of skydivers into the industry, and you're not even going to do a story. Like, he says we can't. Says you're breaking all the rules, and I'm going like, what are you talking about? And they're going like, you can't take a phone with you in free fall, as a passenger. And sure enough, people were coming to the drop zone going, yeah, I can take my phone, right? Just like in the commercial. And they're going like, no, you can't take your phone. And I'm going like, that's a small technicality. I understand that, but that gets managed by the drop zones, and they say, no, you can't take your phone. That was just a commercial. But
Sure.
they still came over to make a jump, like give me
Sure.
some credit. Like, nope, they wouldn't cover it.
I mean,
So
absolutely. I'd much rather have to tell a tandem student they can't jump with their phone than not have that tandem student at all. I mean, come on.
exactly. But anyway, it was just comical that was the case. But yeah, we definitely all those films, and it's interesting because when I'm talking to you, I'm thinking of the audience and who may be listening, and there's the old timers that know all these movies and know all these stories, or no, not know the stories, but know all the the times when all this happened, and maybe getting to learn some of the stories as far as where my life and all of that. And then there's the new jumpers that maybe are listening that are like, who is this guy?
Right.
And they think skydiving started when they started. That's kind of the way we all did. It's like skydiving started this day when I started, and there's always been tandem, and there's always been like this, and I would like to encourage the new jumpers to. It's easy for me to say now that I'm older, but I'd like to encourage them to really look back at the history of it, because it's fascinating,
Sure.
and you can hear some of the stories through old timers like me, and
Well, that
really
was
get a feel for what it was that we did for you, back then, and what it
absolutely.
is that we can't get away with anymore.
Absolutely. Well, one of the big motivating factors behind the podcast was kind of to chronicle the journey of skydiving, not just for myself, but for everybody, which is why I've had brand new jumpers on, and then as far back as I can go. And I've been very lucky to have a lot of influential people that have come on to tell some stories. And I think that it does a great disservice to the sport to not try and see where it's all come from. And it's such a fast changing sport that the pioneers in the sport might still be on the next load with you, right? The guys that got it all going. And for people like me who, an almost 30-year career in the sport in one way or another is directly affected by the fact that I was able to follow in the footsteps of guys like you. It would be horrible to not know the history behind it, and all the little things, and even stuff like you said that the jumpers would get upset about movies like Drop Zone not being, correct in regard to what's going on with the skydiving. Oh, please. They can let that shit
Right.
go because it's supposed to be for
Yeah,
fun.
exactly.
That particular movie, more than anything, nailed the culture to me,
Yeah, yeah,
which
yeah.
was a really big thing because now going back, I look at it and I watch the skydives and go, okay, that's pretty fucking goofy. But I
And,
watch the
and
interaction of the jumpers and I'm like, that's dead on.
yeah, yeah. Are you talking about drop zone or cutaway?
Both. I mean,
Yeah. Okay.
Drop Zone had a lot of proper skydiving and everything in it, but you look at some of the
But it's more
situation
Hollywood.
exactly, and you're
More.
looking at it
Yeah.
going, okay, but it's
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah.
it
Yeah. No,
really did, it nailed that culture thing, I think.
yeah, yeah, for sure. And I know a lot of the complaints from jumpers was that the word cutaway was used about 50 times in the movie. It was like, okay, enough of this cutaway. You use it once or twice to that's where the title comes, but they get overusing it. But actually, that was one of my most fun movie jobs for one reason. It's actually the only feature film that I have where my name is in the front of the movie, like with the credits as the movie starting as a director of photography for the aerial unit. So 60% of the film was shot by me because there's more aerial scenes than there are ground scenes. And as far as the number of the minutes. And so that was great for me. And it also, because I was in charge of that, there was if you look at just my shots, not the story and all the other complaints you have about talking in free fall and all the other goofiness that doesn't seem real or seems fake. But if you look at my shots, they really, really, really do a good job as far as portraying that. And I had the fortune of working with Guy Manos as a director. He was a first-time director. He's a skydiver. He's the one that wrote Drop Zone, and they're pretty much the same script. It's just that one deals with secrets and the other one deals with drugs, but they're pretty much the same kind of concept. And we sat in a meeting, and he asked me as a cinematographer. He respected me a lot as a cinematographer, and he always asked me, "How do we get rid of this problem?" Because as a director, I don't like it. And the problem he was talking about was the scene between the first unit and second unit. So in other words, when you see the actors pretend to skydive, they're hanging by these wires and they're pretending to be tracking, and they have these little fans going in their face and all that stuff. And it always looks fake. You go like, okay, real, fake, real, fake. Nowadays, there's a lot more computer graphics and it's mostly fake.
Yeah.
They use very little real stuff just to kind of grab the organic and then they build the rest of it. But at the time, he asked me, how do we make it look real instead of looking fake? So I told him my idea, and we had a couple of different elements that were very crucial. One was that we had to shoot the actors poorly. In other words, what they do is we shoot the skydiving scenes usually after they shot the actors, which is really much harder to match. And they shoot the actors in a controlled environment with all of these lights. So it's basically like the planet of the four suns or something. It's like I only have one sun when we're in free fall, and I have no reflectors and no diffusers and no way to change it. We got to deal with the one source of light, and that's one sun, and that's it. Now you're over here with diffusers and making the actors look pretty, and when you put one with the other, you go like, that's not the same. They look very different. So the idea was to shoot the actors using daylight, put him on the ground, still put him in a fake environment, but at least the lighting is the same. So when you saw one cut with the other, the scene looked real.
Sure.
And so if you pay attention to that, in as far as the technical side, you'll notice that. The other thing was that we made the actors jump just enough so you can get away with it. Like Tom Berenger didn't make too many jumps, but we made it a point to get really close to his face when he was deploying, for instance. So at the end of a sequence of diving and whatever, if you get close enough to him and you see, wow, that's really him, and then he deploys his parachute, now in your mind you go, okay, he must be doing his own stunts. And the same thing for landing. We needed him to land right in front of the camera, and he couldn't land for crap because he didn't have the experience. So what we ended up doing is we all had this plan, like a secret plan, and going, okay, so that's what we're gonna do. Okay, that's what we're gonna do. So we ended up, Guy Manos ended up going and top docking him. So he basically docked to the top of his canopy. He never even noticed. He was just looking down, and he just kind of went like, and then he brought him in. So the top canopy steered him right to the camera, and then he peeled off and got out of the frame and then left me with this canopy 100 feet from the ground, which could hardly miss the target because you let him now fly at 100 feet, but there's not many places he's going to go. So we just get the landing of him right there and go like, okay, cool, now we got it. So things like that. And then we had the fortune of Stephen Baldwin, who really liked jumping, so he did a lot of his own stuff, and he was doing his own skydiving and stuff. So that's part of the way you make it look more real. So
Sure.
Anyway, if you guys look at that film, look at more of the quality of the stuff.
I love
and really,
I love that Guy Manos two-stacked Tom Berenger to land him on target. That's fucking fantastic. It's it's funny because as a consumer of movies, and I'm an absolute cinephile, I love movies, and of course anything that brushes up with something like skydiving that I'm so invested in, you love as well. And you're instantly more attracted as soon as you see that the actor or actress is actually doing it. I mean, going back
right,
and
right.
watching Point Break years later and going, Patrick Swayze
Right, yeah.
actually was doing all that shit. It just is, it's
Yeah.
impressive. Even something
And
like
Patrick Swayze also had a fantastic double when he was doubled, which was his brother. It
yes,
doesn't get any closer than that, and his brother
yes.
was really skydiving. And so even though Patrick did a lot of his jumps by himself, he also had a great double. So it was a win-win on that one.
Yeah, and I think his brother's still an active jumper out in Paris.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but I wouldn't doubt it. Yeah.
I think so. I think so. So first off, there's two more things I absolutely want to hear, and you actually brought the first one up. Now I got to hear the full face story. How'd you come up with full face helmets?
Oh my God. I'll try to make it as fast as possible.
All right.
There will be a link that will give you the full story and a little 15, 20-minute documentary that I will release soon enough.
Awesome.
But I'll tell you the quick story. It was embarrassing actually. But I like confessing it anytime. So what it was is back in the late 70s, there was this guy, his name was Steve Fielding, tall jumper, and he liked jumping a full face helmet. He was the only skydiver I've ever seen with a full face helmet, motorcycle helmet. And I thought he looked the coolest. He was tall and slim, and I thought, man, he looks so damn cool. So at one point I needed to renew my helmet, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to use a full face helmet. It's going to look cool, and I'm going to be the coolest looking cameraman in the planet, And so I bought this cheap motorcycle helmet, and I started, putting cameras on and stuff, and the problems immediately started. It was like, first of all, it was once again loose, especially a full face helmet. It's loose because you got to be able to get in and out of it. There's no open face to it, so you have to fit into this hole, and then the drag of it, the amount of dead air trapped behind the visor was incredible. So it was pushing me. Brought me back to my very first helmet, the story I was telling before. It was like, oh my God, this thing is like trying to push off my helmet, off my face. And then also there was this tunnel vision. Now I could look through this little tunnel, and because the chin part was so separated, because it's meant for protection, not for cameras, I lost my peripheral vision, especially looking down, which is very important when somebody goes below you or something. You want to be able to see. You're never really on target. You're always using your peripheral. In most skydiving, anyway. This is not a unique concept to cameras. And so then I started modifying the helmet, took the visor off, started using goggles. I'm going, this is not as cool as I imagined, but okay, it's still a full face helmet. And then I went, okay, I got to solve this problem, and of the visibility. So I thought, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the helmet and cut the piece, the front piece, as it comes around the front. I'm going to cut an inch or an inch and a half, a couple inches, whatever the distance was on each side. And then I'm going to bring that front piece closer. And that way it'll come closer to me, and it'll make contact with, my chin. And then it'll also, come farther away, so it doesn't have as much visibility loss. So I went ahead and cut my $35 helmet and, with a hacksaw and cut it and marked it and cut it. And then I try to mate the two parts and they wouldn't mate anymore. And I'm like, oh my God, I destroyed my helmet. This is my, like $35 are gone. I didn't have any money and stuff. And like, shit, I fucked up, So I'm like, I really fucked up. And I'm going like, well, I don't have any, I'm not going to buy another helmet now. It's like, what am I going to do now? I got to fix this thing. Well, how am I going to fix this thing? Well, fuck it. Let's just force it together, So I went ahead and grabbed the back part, which was wider than the front part because it came in an angle, the front piece being smaller than the back. Sure. It came in an angle. So when you cut that piece, it wouldn't mate anymore. So I had to squeeze the back in order to make it mate with the front, and then put a piece of aluminum in the inside to then some rivets, and then boom, voila, I was fixed. Well, what happened there is all of a sudden I discovered something out of a fluke, out of an embarrassing fluke like that, trying to look cool. I discovered the value of a full face helmet, because now the sides of the helmet were putting so much pressure on the side of my face that it became a completely different helmet. It became a platform that my cameras seemed lighter. I was able to put more cameras and it seemed like more control. It was easier for opening because there was no movement anymore. There was more control, way more than anything that you could do with straps, because straps have a hinging point. So you still have a movement, and the solid front doesn't have that. And then from there, I kept modifying and modifying. I modified a cut to increase the visibility down here. Sure. Because this chin piece, even if it was closer, it still had visibility loss on the sides. So I increased that by cutting it. So then all of a sudden, this beautiful helmet came to be, and it was more than looking cool. And it wasn't actually looking as cool as it did before, when it was just the full face normal look, but it was functional, way better. So then from there, there's a whole story on all the morphing all the way to my helmets today, and it's never ending. I'm still modifying helmets today, but that's how I came up with a full face helmet, and others adopted it. And what's funny is most of the helmet manufacturers never even understood this. Well, I never shared this. It is technology that I'll be sharing in that video, and then it's something I want to give away, the same as the jumpsuit technology. And then so in this case, people were doing, oh, I'll do this, I'll do the opposite. It'll be that way. It's not the same as everybody else. I'll cut my cut down this way and on the other way. And people start, I'm going like, no, there's a purpose for this here. It actually fits in your chin this way. And then the back, the same thing. I'll cut it upward this way. It's like, no, there's a purpose for it to be coming on the bottom. I actually did some research and found some things on why it was better on the bottom of this bone right here. Sure. Because there's a place there you can actually support it. And when you make the cut higher, then there's no support. Your helmet has more movement. Sure. So to me, it became more of a function and instead of a look. And this is the same pet peeve on most camera helmet manufacturers and most jumpsuit manufacturers: create a Halloween costume, not a functional piece of equipment. Sure. And that's my sure. But it is a long story. I know we have limited time, so I'll just try to give you the rapid story of it.
I think it's fantastic that such a leap forward in technology for shooting photography and video and free fall came because you wanted to look cool.
Yep. It's like, I just wanted to look cool.
A fair amount of shit in skydiving has been invented for that exact reason. I just want to look cool.
Yeah, exactly. I just want to look cool. And and actually the helmets, the way they're cut now, like I say, don't look as cool, but they certainly work way better. And I'm so glad people adopted that. And everybody's kind of done their own. It's rarely you get one off the shelf that works properly. Now back to GoPros, most of them work okay, but sure, not in the. And I think one of the things that I really like to leave the audience with is, that's been part of the fun. It's not a pain in the ass to design this stuff. It's not a pain in the ass this is like a whole journey of inquiry and invention and trial and error. And you end up with this beautiful product, but it's part of what enhanced my entire career. Sure. From day one, from the jump 20 to over 30,000 jumps, I've been going through this process of development of this particular piece of equipment. The same thing with the camera suit, which I will again plan to release a video showing the technology. People are starting to copy my wings, and they still don't know why. It's like, oh yeah, he's got solid wings or harder wings, stiff wings. Let's put stiff wings on there, but they have no clue why and what they do.
Sure.
So I really want to put out the technology. This is the design. This is what I did it, and have people go ahead and hopefully be inspired to. That's part of the fun.
Sure.
If you decide to be a skydiver and you go like, I'm going to be a cameraman, so I just get a helmet off the shelf and I'm going to be this and I'm going to be, it's like, that's not the fun.
Yeah.
The fun is really getting involved in what does it take? What does it do? How does it work? What, even if you have shooting a GoPro, where's the corners of that wide lens and how can I make it compose better? How can I make it so it doesn't distort so much or it distorts intentionally? And all of that is, you're missing out on the fun when you take the shortcut and just try to go off the shelf and just for a job. And
I mean, I've
had so much fun doing this. Don't skip the fun. Don't skip the fun.
I was lucky in that, like my first helmet, first camera helmet was the only helmet I ever jumped, and it was the old Pararaptor, which was the one with the door in the back, and so you'd smush it to your face and clamp the thing down. And the helmet was designed, but what you did with the helmet wasn't. So your switches for stills, the way you mounted the cameras, the way you cut the plates, and all that stuff, and even to what kind of an eyepiece you would use or make one. And so it was exactly that. It was so much fun to go out and try something. Fuck, that didn't work. I'm gonna have to try something else.
Right.
This one didn't. And it was really cool because when you finally got it, you felt like you earned it.
Right. Yeah.
Which was nice. Cool. Now,
what was the other question?
Yeah. Two things. First off, what's a great tip? Or not a tip, but how the hell are you able to still turn your head left and right and up and down? 49 years jumping with a camera on your head. I've had 2 surgeries on my neck. How'd you do it?
Well, it's all technique. It really is. I have no neck injuries or minor injuries. I have no neck pain, and it all has been technique. A long time ago in a commercial for Coca-Cola, I was shooting a 32-pound setup, which involved a 35mm camera, still camera, video assist, anamorphic lenses. The lenses were almost as heavy as the camera, just because they wanted anamorphic lenses, even though it was a commercial. Most of the time you use those only for feature film. But anyway, and this is again a long story that I'm going to shorten. And there is a video that talks, actually the same video on the helmets talks about this a little bit. And basically, I was shooting a commercial, and it was belly, and I didn't know, it was just basically shooting belly, and the fall rate of the skydive was slower than the helmet wanted to go. So I could slow down my fall rate to the fall rate of the skydive, but my helmet wasn't having it. My helmet was going, I'm sorry, I can't slow down for you. I'm going with or without you. So I was having to negotiate this in free fall with my helmet and go like, you have to stay with me. And it's going, no, I can't. And we're having this conversation in free fall pretty much. And as a result, the back of my head, the muscles on the back of my neck, down my spine were trashed, the back of my arms and everything, just from holding for a minute, holding the weight up and having this battle. So every time they broke off at 4 or 5, I would tell them to leave the center for me, and I would sit. I would go into a sit and go like, oh, I got to take a 5-second break. and then I go like, oh, and I'd just be like, you can see, just kind of like when your legs are gone in a sport and you got to, if you take 1 minute break, you're back,
Yep.
So that's why they rotate teams in most sports, because it's like you spent them like in hockey and basketball, you go, and then you just got to rotate. So anyway, so that's when I learned that just putting the helmet on didn't turn me into a superhero. It's like, this is a different entity that has its own needs and its own effects to nature, to the physics of free fall and gravity and all of that. So I had to, learn this. And there was actually a moment when I had a conversation with my helmet, because I walked by it fully assembled and I was like, no way, I don't jump that. And I was like really scared and ignored it and kept walking, you know. And I was like, I can't ignore my helmet and keep walking and pretend that didn't happen. I'm gonna have to put it on again, you know. It's like I can't. So I came back to the helmet and I had a conversation with her, you know. I actually, you know, hey baby, you know, like I miss you, you know, and I'm sorry we haven't danced for a while, but you know, I just haven't, hasn't been the need, but I really miss you. And then, you know, in the middle of it, I'd go like, hey, you're not angry, are you? It's like, you're not gonna hurt me, are you? You know, it was a silly conversation, you know, and but that's when I really realized that it was a separate entity that had its own needs and that I needed to dance with her in free fall.
Sure.
I actually named her. Her name is Marcella, and all of my helmets are Marcella. And I needed to respect that. And the analogy I use when I'm teaching like photography, skydiving photography and stuff is like when you go to a IKEA or when in Europe, where in the supermarkets the wheels all turn in a cart and you have it full of beer, which we all have experienced that, and you have this very heavy cart and you're trying to turn into an aisle. If you just turn the cart, it'll just spin and keep going in the same direction. Where in the States, because the back wheels don't turn, you're able to turn it a little more and it turns.
Sure.
But so if you want to turn a cart that has all four wheels spin and you want to change direction, you have to get around that cart. If you're going this way and you want to go that way, you get around the cart
Yeah.
to change with it and you push it in that direction. That's what I got to do with the helmet. And that's what I learned to do in opening. That's what your question was about, learning how to survive that. So I
Sure.
learned to survive the helmet by respecting this law and this relationship and really treating it as a relationship and understanding it. So then what I do is there's a certain technique I use, which I don't recommend trying it without training because it can also hurt you. But it's basically the concept is to if I'm going to change direction, if I stop and the helmet wants to keep going, the load is all on my neck.
Mm.
But if I get under it as I'm deploying and then catch it, it's kind of like a dance. Again, I get under it and I catch it, and then
Sure.
together we land, you know.
Sure.
But I first got to get under it so the load is into my spine rather than this way. You know, it's more
Sure.
like into the spine. And that's kind of how it's been a technique that has been executed, and I've gotten really good at it. So I can go and go and go, and it really, you know, my neck has never been a problem because of it. And it's just, you know, I guess it's just lucky that I respected that and I embraced it as a relationship rather than pretending that I could just pull and nothing was happening. You know, it's like,
Sure. Well, I mean, when you're making skydives where your head has a higher terminal velocity than your body,
yeah,
you better figure it out. And it
yeah,
sounds
yeah,
like
exactly. And that's like when you go like, what? Why is my head want to keep going? It's like, well, because
man, oh
you're
man.
slowing down your body to slow down with the terminal velocity, and your helmet's going, I'm sorry.
Sure,
Well, you
sure.
know, you do have to figure it out. Yeah, at that
That's
point.
wild. The last thing I want to wrap up with is for especially for the younger jumpers that are really enthusiastic about being able to go out and shoot pictures and video like you were when you got started. What advice do you have to them? Because I mean, it's a different world, but it's one that you've helped pioneer. So what's the top three things they should be thinking about?
Well, I think the top thing is, it's kind of a difficult answer, but it's the top thing for me is it's not about the photography. So even if you back up even more, it shouldn't be about the job. It shouldn't be like I want to have a job in skydiving, so I guess I can do skydiving photography
Sure,
because then I can shoot tandems. Um, it should be more of a passion that has a little bit more meaning to it, and that's what becomes the most. And I'll tell you why in a second. So for instance, for me, it's not about the photography. I don't care about the photography. It's not about skydiving. I don't care about skydiving. What I care about is, like I said before, is I got the itch for photography at a certain age and it has always been about, I see beauty, I go like, this is beautiful, this is inspirational, I would like to share it, I have this passion for it, and then I need photography. So then I become an expert at photography as a need to express myself and to share with others this beauty that I see. So it's not about the photography. It's about what do you want to do with it? What is your calling? Is it about expressing beauty? Is it about expressing a point of view? Is it expressing a political point of view? It can be any kind of political point of view. For me, it's about love, creativity, courage, and those things are expressed in my work. The same thing for skydiving. Skydiving is just an arena that is fascinating, where I get to use so much intuition and so much of this understanding of the variables that we were talking about before, that you have to work out and you have to really understand like a language in order to be in the right place at the right time and really get to understand the light and all the things that are happening, reading the circumstances that are happening in front of you and all of that. So, but that's what it's about, that magic that I'm chasing, that I'm looking at, that beauty that I want to capture. The skydiving is just a way to get there. It's just a way to be there. But it's not about skydiving. It's just a vehicle. It's just an environment. And the photography is the same thing. It's just a tool in which I get to do what I really am about. So figure out, so that's what the biggest advice is, that figure out why you want to do that, beyond just because you want to jump a lot. And this is one way you get to do it for free. The other reason, the thing I wanted to add to that is, it's because when you do it that way, it's so much fun. People ask me, one of the biggest questions I get is like, how in the hell have you been going like that at the intensity you've been going and not get bored, not get tired, not get burned out like everybody does? And to me, that is the answer. It's never been about jumping. It's never been about photography. It's been about expressing myself and living in that magical world that we understanding that language we were just talking about. We're seeing the magic, reading the future, anticipating it, meeting it in a moment in time. All of those things are a fascinating way to live a life. The rest of it is just an environment, an instrument, and something I chose, like other people choose music and other people choose writing and so on and so forth. But it's that has kept it interesting, and that it keeps it new, and that's why it's more like no, I don't want my body to give up as I get older, and I don't want to stop because I don't want to give that part up. And if I ever do, I'll have to look for a different way to find that. But it's really not about the photography. So if you find something like that you can use photography for, then you will have a more fulfilled and happy time doing it, and it's more and more fun when you do it that way. So that's I think the biggest advice. And you asked me for 3, and that's only 1 to 2, but I think it encompasses
absolutely. Well, I think at the end of the day, it's got to be the right motivation and the right passion for somebody, and that pretty much sums it up perfectly. Now, I know with your instruction and all the stuff that you've got going on, how do people find out about everything from courses to past projects to future projects, all the stuff you've got going on? How do they find Norman Kent?
Well, my main page, which is kind of for skydivers, and that's where I put skydiving event photos and things like that, and it has a lot about me, is normankent.com. And it is NORMANKENT.com. Not Norm. People call me Norm, but normkent.com takes you somewhere else. That's not me. normankent.com. I also have a more professional site that's more for production companies and stuff like that to look at, and that one is called skydivingmovieproductions.com, and that's with an S at the end. And then I also have, of course, in Instagram is Norman Kent Productions, and in Facebook is Norman Kent Productions also. And I do have several pages in Facebook and in Instagram, including Norman Kent Photography in both of them. But I'm trying to stick with Norman Kent Productions because it's just too many pages. All it is that's where my non-skydiving photography is. So, I can be reached in any of those. But if you really want to follow what I'm doing, go to Norman Kent Productions in all of the platforms and all those websites that I just gave you, and that's the best place. And also you can communicate with me through those pages too. So that's the best way to reach me.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, that's how I was able to reach out to you, and this is, I've said it a million times on the podcast. That's the thing that I think I love the most about skydiving is the community and the fact that some guy you've never met can send you a message on Facebook saying, "Hey, you want to sit down and talk about skydiving for an hour?" And next thing you know, I'm sitting in the studio, sitting having a great conversation with Norman Kent, and it's because of skydiving and that community and the joy of being able to share what we do.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I'll
And
tell you,
thank you so much for having me, man.
I cannot thank you enough for taking time. I know you're always busy and we were able to get it done. And I'm gonna have to have a round two because I know I've barely scratched the surface with all the stories that you've got, and I'm gonna want to get more stories out of Norman Cat.
Absolutely, anytime. I always love talking about it, and I hope the audience has enjoyed a little bit of the lunatic stuff that we've been talking about.
Absolutely. Norman, thank you so much. You take care.
All right, you too. Thank you.
Well, there you have it. Another episode of the Lunatic Fringe podcast brought to you as always by, well, wait, not as always, actually. Brought to you now by Gyro. Formerly known as NZ Aerosports, you'll head to gyro.com for their next level line of canopies. By Pussfoot, the Extreme Sports Collective. Head over to pussfoot.com to check it out. By Summit Parachute Systems, check out summitparachutesystems.com to talk to Jarrett Martin and the gang about kick-ass pilot rigs, rigging courses, and more. By Flyaway Indoor Skydiving, go to flyawaytn.com and check out all the cutting-edge stuff to come. By Pure Spectrum CBD, head to purespectrumcbd.com to check out their wide range of CBD products. And as for us, head to the lunaticfringepodcast.com to listen to any of the hundreds of episodes currently available, hit the link for our YouTube channel, pick up your copy of the Lunatic Fringe book or The Accidental Stripper, and get a sneak peek at upcoming guests. Once again, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Damn.